you spoke of servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain what that means to you and kind of what kind of leadership that is?
Well, I find that opportunities to get a new experience is so rewarding and so rich, and being a person, I'm privileged in that I'm American, that I'm Anglo, that I'm educated, so being able to give back is so important, and you end up gaining so much more from that. I think there probably have been an amalgamation of experiences that have shaped me. There isn't one particular thing, but I studied in rural China as an undergrad, and that was a really life transformational experience for me. Working with people who were in serious poverty, outside of the major cities, living next door to a family where a child was being abused and having to intervene. I think it's about that connection and stepping up, and I think that's what we're not seeing in community, and I think that's why I'm so involved with the Compassionate Cities movement, because we've become a community that is isolated. When I was growing up, we didn't have fences, so you could play baseball across 5 people's yards. And then I moved to Arizona as a young adult, and we have cinder block walls. So we drive into the garage and we don't see our neighbors. So it's connecting with neighbors, it's connecting to community, and addressing the hurt in the world.
So I didn't realize that. I come from a small town in Wisconsin. Also, we had tons of space, no fences, and then it's not fences; it's cinder block walls here.
Yeah.
Which is very different than a fence.
Right.
So I think that becomes even more pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
So are we afraid of community? What is getting in our way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think scarcity drives the fear, and we see that with the discussions about building a wall and so forth, not to get political, but we start to do this, right? What's mine is mine, don't take away from me, and that's where so much polarization is coming from. And that's why we have to address these things, because if we can find a common ground of shared values, then we can work together.
So I want to go into that too, and also about your view first on abundance and scarcity. So how do you view the world and not get caught in a scarcity mentality?
Try starting a company and you'll experience scarcity for a few years.
Right.
And you realize you can get by without so much. Gosh, it's sort of a politically loaded question because we just have such abundance of so much. I think my daughter was telling me the other day that, the food waste alone that we throw away in this country could feed, 3 more continents, where there is true scarcity. It's a tough question because I actually think the most important place for abundance is inside.
Yeah.
And that's, that's he or she has a rich life if you have this.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that goes to the human values
Mm-hmm.
that you are so richly living
Mm-hmm.
and promoting.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do we start to create that sense of
Mm-hmm.
abundance?
Yeah, we have to quiet the mind. We need to slow down, and we have to be disciplined in taking care of ourselves. So well-being, it used to be a common phrase, "Oh, I'm so busy." That was the greeting. "Oh my gosh, I'm so busy," as if it were a trophy. There's the Chinese kanji for busy, when written, is heart killing. Isn't that interesting? So I think we have to slow down, and I think we have to allow ourselves an opportunity to take time.
So how do you recommend when people are running an organization, they have families and real responsibilities that I don't know if it's more than in the past, but it's certainly not being made up, that there are genuinely looking at this, not a lot of extra hours in a day.
Right. So some of the things that we recommend, even unplugging, like I'm going to unplug all day Sunday and not check my phone every few minutes. I do worry about the millennials and the Gen Zs, and not to sound like an old fogey, but because we're all guilty of it, right, with our devices. But even something like that, or to go for a walk. I mean, there's just little things that we can do.
So, because I wanna hover on this. If there was, so going for a walk, doable. What else is doable for that person who genuinely does look at their day and like, I just really am busy. So how could I possibly start to take better care of myself to move in the direction of?
Sure. So that's when we have to start thinning our lives. I call it thinning our lives because if the plate is too full, then something's got to give.
Yeah.
And so it is about prioritizing, and it's really knowing, again, who am I? What do I love? What are my gifts? How do I share them with the world? What do I value? And is there misalignment on this plate?
Okay, so those are a whole bunch of really rich questions, but what do I value? Feels like a really good question for people to ask themselves. I know that you use assessments and a lot of different work with that, but in a light way, what's an example of like how someone could start to explore and get more closely in touch with their what they value?
Well, I think that gets to the contemplative work, right? It's just sitting down, and it can be taking out a blank piece of paper and just, what is it that I love? What makes me happy? What makes me feel really happy?
Yeah.
And sometimes some things jump out that you don't even think about because we fill our plate with so many things that don't make us happy.
I think this is I hope everybody just really hears this, because this is super powerful. What makes you happy? What is it that you value? Getting clear on that, then this busyness, some of those can easily be distinguished as not as important.
Right.
Now all of a sudden maybe there is some more room, because I think the idea of being busy, that can happen pretty quickly.
And the values motivate the behaviors. So let's say, for example, I'm going to PTA meetings. I can't stand PTA meetings. I cannot handle them. Why am I really going to the PTA meeting? Is it because I feel that there's some expectation, or I need to be able to bump into my peers? Why am I doing this? Why can't I let go of this? Maybe I'm just going to let go of PTA meetings. That's just a silly example, but I think we tend to fill our lives with a lot of stuff that doesn't really get at the core of what we value, and those values need to be aligned with the behaviors, or you won't be happy.
Yeah. So I think this is, monstrously important. Our lives get busy, not often without us often knowing or consciously choosing all the stuff in our lives. It just fills up. If we took a moment, what's most important to me? What makes me happy? Is this in alignment? Some of those things may fall away. Different things might show up. Now we're starting to talk about a conscious experience. Step one, is that becoming that awareness? Is that really?
The awareness is step one. Mindfulness, and I really encourage people there's so many outlets to learn about mindfulness practices now, with so many different faith traditions and with secular approaches and so forth. So I just think it's great to just understand what mindfulness is, because it is a muscle that you have to grow.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but when you do begin with mindfulness and you have that self-knowledge, you'll gain more clarity. That also helps you handle when the boat starts to rock, because there's too much stuff going on. But from there, you can build upon your soft skills working with other people who can help create that clarity. I don't know if you're familiar with the Quaker practice. There's a Quaker practice where you gather in a room, and if you have a dilemma, you're trying to make a decision, the fellows will meet there with you without passing judgment and without telling you what to do until you come to your own wisdom.
Amazing, right? And so this wisdom isn't actually new, right? Like this is, in a lot of ways, it's been around. It's just now becoming either easier to access.
Right.
There's different ways. So talk a little bit about.
Yes and no, though, because I think there's so much noise. There's so much noise that it's not as easy to listen to your heart. As well, I think that there's a lot of I think we've been hard on ourselves as a society, at least in the Western world, with being so externally focused and not listening to that voice, so it becomes harder to hear.
Yeah. So I think that's, as a leader, as an individual, in any way, just this idea of really starting to get to know ourselves more, starting to honor me more, could be a good starting place for me to hopefully then be able to honor you and others more.
Right,
But if
right.
we're not honoring, this feels like, and now I get that word a little bit better, like you have to make time. You have to treat it, this honoring.
Respect.
There's
there's respect to that, isn't
Yeah.
there?